Yes, and
Yes, and it's Friday, which means our discussion today is going to talk about patterns. It's going to deal with patterns, and it's going to deal with selling the truth and patterns of selling the truth. Because if you think about it, Nancy, it's one thing to be very straightforward with our prospects and with our colleagues and with our relationships in general, but it's another to figure out what does that mean from one conversation to the next. How do we not lose the string of honesty in our communications?
what what immediately popped to my mind is that when you're telling the truth, you're telling the truth. You don't have to remember what it was you said the time before. And so when you think about patterns or trying to have a pattern, obviously it doesn't apply because I'm speaking my truth. So whatever my truth was yesterday, I hope is still the truth today. However, we do change. So what does that mean about telling the truth?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and I have people ask me this quite often. You know, uh, what does selling the truth mean to you? Which is a very interesting question because it means they understand, they have an understanding of selling the truth, or they would say, what does that mean? What does it mean? They don't really say that. They say, well, what does that mean to you? And I realize that, it's, well, the bigger issue is what does truth even mean to each one of us? Okay, that in today's world, that's one. The other thing is, what does it mean to me to be selling the truth? Does it mean, as opposed to lying, that the alternative would be lying? And it really doesn't. What it means to me, selling to me means selling, like you would say in show business. You're not selling it. You're not selling the character. You're not selling the idea. Or even in sales, even in marketing, someone would say you're not selling us on the benefits. You're not selling us on the product. So when I think about selling the truth, I'm thinking about, the truth is all we have to really put out there. That's our big sack of wares, right? Is nothing without the reality of what they are. So in other words, if I sell an arm, a microphone arm, and as soon as you put the microphone in it, it falls to the desk and it doesn't hold the microphone up. Well, that's pretty useless. So it doesn't matter what I say about it. If I'm going to have a relationship with the customer, this better work. This better work. And if it's not going to work, I better replace it. So the relationship between people is as important as the relationship that each one of those people has with the truth.
Wow, I'm absorbing all of this, and there's so many thoughts banging around in my brain right now from all the things you said. Yeah, yeah. Um, as you were talking about, you're not selling it in terms of showbiz, and then the customer saying you're not selling it. What popped in my mind was the word convincing, and I know that
Mm.
convincing is often used in sales, and I personally do not believe that selling should be a convincing action.
Yeah.
And yet, when you say you're not selling it or you're not selling the value, it's true that unless I present the truth, and now it's not necessarily my truth, Hirsch, I think it's the truth from the buyer's perspective. That's the truth that
Mm.
sells, not my truth. And so when you say that we're bringing reality, whatever that sack of wares is reality, I'd have to say this reality is subject to interpretation and it's subject to nuances depending on the words we use. as you know, I'm into four personality styles, and I talk about the fact that the values of each style are very different. And it's those nuances. When you speak the language of the buyer, when you are presenting reality from the perspective of the buyer, that's when he or she is able to say, yeah, you're selling me.
Yeah. Yeah. The concept of convincing is a tough one
Oh, yeah.
because we don't, again, what's the next door neighbor to convincing is manipulating, and we don't want to feel like we're manipulating somebody, because the connotation there is that we're forcing them into a position that they would not get into themselves.
Yeah.
That's to me what manipulation means. And so I don't want to engage in it, because I don't want to put them somewhere that they shouldn't be or that they don't want to be. And the truth, you made a very good point, which is that there's, we've heard, and we probably have even said, possibly on occasion, my personal truth, my truth. Their truth is that we have to discover our truth. Well, okay, we understand that. That means we have to know where we're coming from. We have to know what's real for us, what matters to us. The reason it's a personal truth is not because it wouldn't be real otherwise. It means because it wouldn't apply to someone else. In other words, if my let's and I say this in my book, let's start with the basics. If you're going to talk about your personal truth, you can say, I like cornflakes. Nobody can tell you that you don't like cornflakes. That's your truth, right? My truth is I like cornflakes. I like frosted flakes better, but cornflakes are better for me, so I'll eat cornflakes. That's a good place to start, because no one's going to say, no, it isn't, right? They're gonna have to let me have that truth. I mean that for me, right?
I'm going to challenge this.
Okay.
As you know, people out there don't know yet, I've been reading a book called A Changed Mind, David Bear. That's
Mm-hmm.
Bayer, like the aspirin, I guess. Bear
Yeah.
aspirin. At any rate, he makes a strong point, and I really believe this, and hence it's all about belief. You see, beliefs are very malleable, but when we say I believe something, we hold it up as true. And so when you say that I like cornflakes, this is reality, this is my truth. Again, if I were to present to you medically, like right now, I've had some health diagnoses, and so I've made some changes in my food plan. Why did I make changes in my food plan? Do I not unlike the things I used to like? I do like them, but I like my health more than I like eating those items.
Yeah.
And so the truth of I like cornflakes can be changed for me into now I like oatmeal or now I like something else. So I'm sharing that because I do want us to take a look at. We hold things as unalienable rights and truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Declaration of Independence right now, but you know what? I don't know if there is any pure truth. I think these are beliefs that you and I and others subscribe to, and enough of us subscribe to it that we do believe it's reality. Um, I could.
Well,
I'm going to give one more example,
yeah.
and this is a books I read when I was much younger by Don Juan, and I can't even Carlos Castanedas wrote these books, and again it was about what is reality, because for this fellow in Mexico, reality was very different than what Carlos was experiencing. He could eat these psychedelic mushrooms and not have a psychedelic experience. So, what is reality? What do
Mm.
I, it's what we're buying into and what we're projecting. I know I'm getting very philosophical, but this
No, but I like
is
it. I like it.
where my head is lately, is because I am questioning. And folks, I think questioning is a key concept here. I am questioning what I think I know and I believe.
I like it because what you're saying is we have to acknowledge that even something as mundane as I like cornflakes as the truth, or I like cornflakes because it tastes like this, or because it does this, or it doesn't upset my stomach. All of these things, while on the most fundamental level they're not deceptive, they're true, are things that I'm believing on a certain level.
Exactly.
So it's not to catch me. You're not saying it as a gotcha thing. Oh, yeah, but that's only true because you have bought into the reality of
Yeah,
blank.
well, yeah,
You're,
yeah.
yeah, you're saying, okay, but if we're going to deal with truth, reality, these concepts, we have to acknowledge that truth is not, truth requires our buy in.
It does. Hence,
In
is
other
that
words,
the truth?
yeah, in other words, that may be helpful in itself in the way that we communicate with one another, because our show, for example, is all about the relationships between buyers and sellers. That's the bottom line. So you, if you didn't need anyone to buy your wares, your sack of wares and all this stuff, then you wouldn't care what anybody thought. It wouldn't matter what. But we're talking about a world in which we have bought in to the notion that there's some benefit to uh, the exchange of goods for valuable consideration, and that's a good thing, because then you could have someone else come along and say, I don't believe in sales. I don't believe in selling
Right,
anything. I don't
right.
want to sell anything. I only
Let's give it
believe,
away.
yeah, I only believe in
Let's
giving things
barter.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, you
You
take,
can
I
give
take.
away something to me and I can give
Mhm.
away something to you. We can both be happy.
There you go. It reminds me back in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I used to live in Massachusetts. In Harvard Square, there was a place with a big bin, and it was a place where take and leave. Let go of what you don't want, take what you want. And people came by and, brought things and left things. In fact, one of the dumpsters in Wellesley, Massachusetts is exactly that. Now you have to have a permit to get into that, so it wasn't quite as easy accessible as the place in Harvard Square. However, the concept was the same. People would just hear things. So it's kind of like a yard sale without a sale. Let me
Yeah.
bring my wares, no claim to them anymore, and you take what you want and leave the rest.
And by the way, we do some version of this. This is exactly what we're doing, right? On LinkedIn or on any platform.
Or
We
right
I wrote
now,
an art.
talking to each other.
Yeah, yes, true. But I wrote an art. I published a newsletter article this morning.
Mhm.
I created that as content. I want the people who follow me and subscribe to this newsletter to get a benefit from it. It didn't cost me anything to do it other than time and energy. It didn't
Well,
cost them money, except they're taking time and energy to read it.
there you
So
go.
if we're starting to be more sensitive to the notion of what's free and what's not, we should acknowledge that I took time to write it, they're taking time to read it. And the point is that I'm putting it out there for free, quote unquote, right? I'm not charging them for money for it, but I want them to be interested in the services that I do provide for a fee. So that's the truth. And that's kind of what I want people to accept with selling the truth. It's not only that I am selling the truth about who I am and what I have to offer. I'm selling the truth about how I offer it. I'm selling the truth about how I charge or qualify or quantify my offerings. And I'm selling the truth about what I hope or believe that they can get out of it if they choose to uh, buy into the things that I'm selling. But
So
let's see what
Troy,
Troy's saying.
he's I believe that people should not really sell, but create an environment to allow people to buy. It's a different frame of mind for sure.
Yeah.
Appreciate your comment and weighing in, Troy. Thank you.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you, Troy. I think that's really a good point because creating that environment is so important in building trust with anyone. I could say I'm creating an environment where like the dog park where people can bring their dogs, but we have certain rules and certain things like that. But I'm creating that environment where people can feel comfortable enough to bring things that are precious to them.
Yeah. Well, I could go on, but we're going to have to
Yeah.
end this conversation at this point. Next week in the United States, it's a holiday, so you will not find us chatting away. So look for us in 2 weeks. I'm Dr. Nancy Zaire, Sales with Soul.
And I'm Hersh Rephun, selling the truth.